It's all come down to this. The Tour Championship at East Lake Golf Club. Who will be the next FedEx Cup champion? And some different looks and vibes at East Lake. What does that mean? Of course, Viktor Hovland, the defending champ. The winner gets $25 million this year. It is the Golfbet Roundtable. And the two guys on the show with me this week, the folks out there are going to see a little bit of hatred and bad blood between these two gents. Matt Delvecchio on site right now.
Yeah, there's bad blood for sure. Our expert picks is coming down to the wire. I had the lead for most of the year, and Ben has snuck back in a little bit. I think I've lost 9 units over the last 3 weeks, so getting a little nervous.
Most of the year. Yeah, right. If we did the amount of weeks at number one, I would have smashed you all. The sad thing is we can't brag too much because we're in the negatives on the year. We haven't picked enough outrights, that's for sure. But I've picked the outright this week because I've said it all year. So I'm pretty comfortable. I'm going to take out the title amongst our group.
I was hoping and just assuming that Ben wasn't going to bring up the fact that we're all in the minus money. It's such a weird and unique event, Ben. We talked about it yesterday on Key Stats. Very difficult to figure it out. But let's just start with this as a kind of table setter. Is there really any way anybody outside this list of the top 5, realistically, Ben? I'm not saying, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Realistically, on its face, can we predict a winner outside of these top 5 guys?
I don't think so. I mean, there's one guy that's starting at 6 under, obviously, that should maybe come into the conversation. But I don't necessarily think Keegan Bradley is going to be able to pull that off. I honestly feel like it's 2 or 3 guys, and it's the top 2 there, and possibly the last guy there because he's proven it before. Hideki is an outlier. If he's fit, if he's firing, if he shows what he did in Memphis and the first round last week, then actually there's some value there. Outside of that, I think we're going to see it come from one of these guys.
I think really it depends. I mean, it depends on what Scotty and Xander bring this week. If they bring their A game and they run away with it, then absolutely. But 2 out of the 5 years, we've seen someone come from 4 under and 5 under. So, yeah, absolutely someone outside.
Yeah, but who was that, Matty? Who was that?
He was a guy on this list.
Both times with Rory McIlroy. So anyone not named Rory McIlroy has only ever won it from 10 or 8 under. That's what's missing here.
Maybe there's a new Rory McIlroy in the field.
Exactly.
Younger players.
So let's pull it up, okay? If -4 is the absolute minimum of what, because that's the farthest back a winner has ever come is -4 since starting strokes in 2019. Okay, so if there's a new Rory McIlroy, technically he's on this list, Matt. So who on this list could be that new Rory McIlroy?
When you're looking at the playoffs, you always want the hot hand, right? I think that's clearly Sam Burns. He was playing unbelievable. He almost holed out on 18 last week, which actually would have had him in a playoff. It would have put him at 12 under for the event versus Keegan. So I really don't know how you don't look at Sam Burns. But these other guys, I mean, if they bring their A game, Cantlay loves East Lake. He could absolutely be one. And Wyndham Clark really showed a lot last week. He wasn't on anyone's radar entering the playoffs. And now all of a sudden he's been playing fantastic golf. So it's kind of a take-your-pick situation in my mind.
Momentum does count in the playoffs, all right? We know that. But let's have a look here, okay? Look, Wyndham Clark, he's only been at East Lake once. He played pretty well. I think he was 3rd. Had a bit of a bump from his home event last week. Okay, you can make a little bit of a case there. Sam Burns, yeah, he's been playing well. Doesn't usually do too bad on Bermuda. He's sitting there. He could maybe make a run. Okay, but let's just not forget the fact that at 10 under and 8 under, Scotty Scheffler and Xander Schauffele. Xander Schauffele especially, an absolute East Lake specialist. It's not like we've got Neville Nuff and Neville Johnson up there, right, ahead of these guys. They've got to actually catch.
You need all of them to fall apart.
Correct. Yes. And they've got to catch. These are not guys who, are just caught fire for a little bit. Those are 2 guys that have been amazing all year. If one of them doesn't get it done, I'll be completely surprised. And good luck if someone does do it. Well done, they will have fully earned it. But in terms of, this market with the starting strokes applied, I'm not looking anywhere except right up the top. Now, if you want to get into the gross stuff, then we've got some absolute talking points with the men that Matty just talked about. When you've got Sam Burns, whether you've got Wyndham Clark, whether you've got Cantlay, whether you've got Morikawa, these guys all of a sudden that do have a little bit of form, but that will take out the starting strokes, then you might find some value.
And that's something that maybe the casual bettor this week doesn't realize. You can bet on the 72-hole gross, no strokes, no net, just the gross outcome of the event is pretty fascinating. But the problem I have with this is almost every player on this list hasn't won this year. And Wyndham was a long time ago. And I'm not going to say just because it's a shortened event didn't mean it counted. He was dominant. It counted. Absolutely it counted.
Yeah. 3 rounds.
You don't think he was so far ahead. Irregardless, let's say it didn't count, okay? None of these guys have won this year outside of Clark. To me, they're not going to flip a switch and shoot 22 under, 23 under par this week. You know, even if Scheffler and Schauffele play okay, none of them are going to go out there and say, okay, I'm going to shoot 65 every day, 66 every day and win. I don't see any of these guys doing this, Ben. Cantlay, maybe 2 rounds. Morikawa, certainly not 3 rounds. Burns, I could maybe get behind just because he's been so hot and consistent lately. But other than that, I don't see any consistency out of anybody on this list, Ben. Do you?
I'd have to go back through the numbers, but I want to know, has any of these guys beaten Scotty Scheffler by 6 or 7 shots in an event this year? I think you'll be pretty hard-pressed finding that. Obviously, last week, Scheffler sort of checked out once he wasn't in it. He didn't need to do anything. He was going to be the number 1 seed, so he didn't have to worry. You know, like outside of that, like where have any of those guys not only beaten Scheffler, but done it by a lot? That's what they're going to do. That's realistically what they have to do. They have to beat him by a lot.
You bring up a good point, though. He hasn't been playing his best golf. So you would argue that he can be beaten by a lot in a week like this when he has a 2-shot lead. Because he's been playing so bad and he's in his head that maybe that cushion actually doesn't matter as much as we think as it does this week. He's also never won. He's 0-2 for the last 2 coming in.
Dude,
as the
yeah, you're right. Scotty Scheffler's not winning this thing. I mean, I'll tip my hat. Everyone knows where I'm going to go. But, like, he's not going to win this thing. There's another guy that's played very well this year, that's won 2 majors, that has a big lead on all of them as well. They're not going to catch that guy because he's got the hunger. He's like literally played at East Lake 7 times, I think it is, and been in the top 7 every single time. He's won the gross portion 1,000 times. Like, I just don't see anyone from that other screen having any chance. This screen, I can make a case that, you know, Rory gets hot. It's a driver's course. You've got to be really good off the tee. He's been wild the last few weeks, but if anyone could just dial their driver straight back in, it would be Rory McIlroy. Ludwig, look, I think he has the game to have a crack, but I'm completely worried about his Sunday scoring. I think he is essentially a new, and I've said this before, a new Jason Day, new Xander, who are going to compete and be in the mix many times as a young up-and-comer before he actually takes the full step into stardom. And Hideki, like, that's great odds there for Hideki, but we just have that underlying, like, how bad is his back? Is it bad? Is it not? Did he just want to conserve some energy? It's just hard to really commit to Hideki Matsuyama under an injury cloud.
So let's just assume Scheffler continues to play poorly. That means Xander Schauffele would be the leader in the clubhouse at 8 under par. Why is nobody talking about a man who's only 2 shots behind that? Assuming Scheffler plays poorly, Matt, why are we just throwing in the towel on Keegan Bradley, whose odds are plus 3,300 when he starts in the 4th to best position, as if like last week, and it wasn't the Travelers, it didn't mean extra to him. It wasn't one of those events that he had a chip on his shoulder. The dude just went out there and dominated and was so clutch when it mattered. No one's talking about him this week.
They should be talking about him because the clear answer there is that he's just not a name brand. You see all these big names around him. You see Keegan Bradley's a little bit older. That's the distrust. Now, there's also distrust of winning back-to-back weeks. I personally am never someone who wants to back someone who just won the week prior. However, as we've seen in playoffs, people have won multiple times, many times throughout the playoffs. So it's that the number, I think it's worth a throw, but that is the reason. I think it's clearly just his name brand.
The only reason to have a throw is exactly that. This is the time that people go back-to-back in the FedEx Cup playoffs. It's when it happened. Victor Hovland did it last year. We've got 12 guys that have won twice in the playoffs since the inception throughout the playoff system. So in that method, it's either him or Hideki that's going to win this week. So that in itself, if you just want an omen bet, one or either of those two, and of course you can see Bradley's odds are triple that of Hideki. So theoretically, he's a hot hand. My issue though here is, Matt mentioned it, it's sort of, he's not too old, but the older guys do struggle to necessarily come back to back. It's the same reason why I worry about Adam Scott being a true contender, even though he's won at East Lake before. Would have taken a lot out of him last week at altitude. And just that in itself. Altitude is another beast. They've had to come down, they have to acclimatise again. Keegan would have been so pumped. All that adrenaline dump is something that I'm not sure he can go back to back. Others have done it. I'm not sure he is a candidate to do it.
Benny, if you're worried about Adam Scott, explain to me why he's your long shot.
Well, because we have a cut-off at plus 5,000, and I
he's
don't
minus
really think
3.
Yeah. Look, he's 3 under. He played really well last week for 2 rounds. Had some ups and downs. The only thing that held him back over the weekend was his putter, which was diabolically bad. If he brings this ball striking to East Lake, where, as I said, he won in 2006 before we went to the playoffs as a Tour Championship winner. If he brings that and can actually make a few putts, and given it's all new greens, that means he's sort of more on par with others. So, like, not knowing the breaks that everyone knows or whatever else could actually help the guys who don't putt as well. He could theoretically be in the mix if he keeps that momentum going. I do worry, as I said,
0% chance.
He put a lot of energy in, but if you're looking for someone that's over 5,000, there really isn't anyone. I'm going to go with my Aussie mate.
Matt, I will dog him with you. I'll dog him with you, but let's
0% chance.
But let's and we sweated that, by the way, on Sunday.
0, 0, 0. Whoever you've got on your board, Matt, is -0, negative, because as we've seen, you can't pick a winner this year. So we'll see how you go.
Because he didn't pick Scheffler. He's the only winner we all picked.
The 0 reference, by the way, is after his round on Friday last week. Ben was very high on Adam Scott, as he always is. I told him there's a 0% chance he won. Yes, did it sweat a little bit? For sure. I'll give you the sweat. But still, he didn't win. Keegan came through. Again this week, 0% chance for Adam Scott.
Don't pretend like you picked Keegan, though, at that point. You actually you said he wouldn't pick Keegan as well. So
I said the field. Give me the field.
Yeah, the field.
Last thing on Scott here. His recent results are basically as good as anybody's on tour, guys. I mean,
he's playing great.
2 second places. I mean, contended a couple other times, let alone in majors. I was surprised that Viktor Hovland didn't contend last week.
Yeah.
Disappointed, maybe not the right word, but you weren't surprised?
No, like, he just hasn't been that player he was last year. He's had a couple of out of the box weeks, like the PGA Championship.
Yeah.
I didn't think he would maintain it in Memphis. He proved me wrong there, but it wasn't enough for me to think that he was going to be in the same run. And most of it was because of what he said. Talking to him, I was in Memphis, I was in Denver, talking to him and his team. He just didn't have the same confidence level that I've seen from him in the past. So I have to admit, he overachieved in my mind in Memphis. So I wasn't necessarily predicting much from him. I was happy to be proven wrong, but he didn't do it. Look, but he's at least able to go, hell for leather this week. That's what he's got.
The reason I think he could be a potential long shot is just because he is starting at -2. His odds are pretty high. For somebody at -2, they're probably not as high as they should be. But I think just the fact that if this guy can figure it out, no, he hasn't been consistent. But he hasn't had to be consistent, okay? He wasn't good last week. Does that mean he's good this week? That would help our anti-consistent narrative. I'm just thinking Viktor Hovland, his memories at this place, albeit maybe not the same course as it was, I think he can have the kind of week where he doesn't need to be great every day, doesn't need the consistency. He can figure things out. If I'm going to pick a long shot that's way up there, he would be mine.
It all comes down to the first round for these guys. If they don't make some inroads on Thursday, it just becomes a melee.
Make up like 4 shots.
Yeah, it just becomes, if they don't make a move, we had a hot start last year from Morikawa, right? Super hot first two rounds.
First round leader.
Yeah. If you can be that guy, if you can set a pace early and feel like you're in it, then I think you've got a chance. Anyone who's a slow starter, like, I don't see anyone coming back from miles after one round, right? They've got to get started on Thursday from the start. They get to go out first, obviously reverse order, so the guys who are even 1 under, 2 under, 3 under get to set the standard, get to show that there are birdies out there, put a little pressure on the guys who are trying to protect the lead. Go hell for leather. That's what he has to do. Start hot. Otherwise, it's game over.
Matt, I think your long shot was on our board here of other guys who could potentially win.
Sunjae Im is going to be this year's Colin Morikawa. Colin Morikawa was plus 12,000 to start the week last year, and then he tied for the lead after the first round. That's going to be Sunjae this week. I think you back the Asian descent players this week. They're hungry to get a FedEx Cup championship. Hideki mentioned it. I'll get into his quote later, but they want a FedEx Cup champion, and no one has from Asian descent has won a FedEx Cup. So Sunjae Im is a guy who's been playing fantastic. He's a guy who can go scary low. I think his first round means everything. If he doesn't come out and play fantastic in the beginning, I'll pull back my long shot. But getting the odds that you can get right now and banking on a really good first round, look at Sunjae.
Again, we talk about not winning this year. That worries me, not having closed the deal. But again, might be someone to look at. If you want to have a flyer at a first round later, then go for your life. There's going to be a zillion to one in that market. Also in that gross market, like he's been playing really well. I actually think where Sunjae is value, Matty, is this week with only 30 in the field, you can get a bit of juice for a top 5 because they're chasing already for a top 5. I think Sunjae becomes an option in that market because I can see him playing to the finish, so to speak, right? Like having a crack, getting a few strokes on the first day, and making his move without actually winning the tournament.
Interesting you brought up top 5 because I think that's the coolest market out there for the best bang for your buck this week because you've got so many players at huge money. I'm talking guys that you think, this guy can get top 5. He's only got to, make up a handful of strokes on the guys already in the top 5. Matt, you got a big one.
Yeah,
plus 800.
Long here. So, a little caveat here. I only went so long because I'm trying to chase Ben back down to expert picks.
Fine.
However, Billy Horschel, he's been a guy who's been playing fantastic this year. Okay, the way I break it down is that he needs to have 4 rounds between 12 under and 13, 14 under. That puts him at that 15, 16 mark, which is where I think this top 5 is going to come in. Last year, or maybe a couple years before, he went 10 under through 3 rounds and then went even on round 4. So he has low rounds in him. If he can get 11, 12, 13, or 14 strokes throughout these 4 rounds, and he ends the week around 15, 16, he's a great top 5 bet this week at plus 800. You can get him at 1,200 on like DraftKings and FanDuel, but they don't give you ties. I think BetMGM with the ties in full 800, that's a really good long shot to look at.
Yeah, I'll say as much as that. If you're looking for a market in the top, I've tried to get the one without where ties pay in full, because there's probably going to be ties, right? There's going to be a tie around that.
Exactly.
So you might lose a bit of the juice, but you should go for it. Now, Horschel is a former FedEx Cup winner. He's been hot in the playoffs before. -1, it is a long way to claw back, but again, he will be chasing it. He's thinking to put his name up in lights again for President's Cup, etc. He's going to want to sort of make a statement. He won't have any give up in him over the 4 rounds. I hope he doesn't make it because I don't want to see Matty catch.
There's no real pressure for him too. But he's all the way back at 1 under.
And I think
he's got no pressure.
He doesn't, and you know who has pressure to win the whole thing is your top 5, Ben. And we know why Ben did this, Matt. It's a safety pick for a guy who starts -4. It's plus money, Ben. I'll give it to you. It's plus money. Rory, top 5.
Yeah, I see it as an easy pick, right? It's an easy bank builder, to be honest. If you want to have a conservative bet out there, a Rory top 5. And again, the ties pay in full, so it's not like it's going to be neutered or anything like that. Rory's going to have a crack at the 2 leaders. He's going to go after them. He knows Eastlake. He's won there 3 times. He's going to actually try to get it. He's also a candidate always, even if he does start slow, for a backdoor top 5. It's just the way Rory rolls. You could see him being out of it and still shooting 62 in the last round to finish T5. So you're never out of this bet, as far as I'm concerned. And Rory, he needs his driver to come back. It hasn't been there the last 2 weeks. But if it does, no one knows Eastlake, or no one's had as much success at Eastlake than this guy. So I see it, as I said, as a nice, easy, not saying go put your mortgage on it. I'm just saying it seems like a nice bank builder.
I had to do something similar to Matt. Sahith Theegala wrist injuries aside, we have no idea what the case is with that. Ben, you can probably give a little update here when I'm done with my spiel. But -3, he is the guy getting the least respect of anybody at -3 right now at plus 650 for a top 5. We're not talking about him starting at even par and having to make up 7 shots on these top 5 guys. We're talking about him making up, 2 strokes on top 5? For a guy, albeit he might be injured, hasn't played his best lately, but I think we forget how good Sahith Theegala played in long stretches this year. Didn't quite get it done many times he thought he should have. I loved the number of almost 7-1 for a top 5 and only having to make up a couple of strokes, Ben. The issue, though, is the injury.
Yeah, it has a little bit of a risk concern. He had it there in Denver last week. We saw him shoot $1 million over the weekend and finish the back of the pack. That's why I think you're seeing this number. People are assuming it's potentially a problem and he's not going to be able to be at his best over these 4 days. But here's the other thing that I think was important. Last week, he was on the bubble of the automatic spot for the President's Cup. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he got the last.
He did. He's number
right?
6. Yeah.
So with that in mind, now that he's in, I think that frees him up. I think that worry, if you will, off his shoulders should help him sort of bounce back. As long as the wrist isn't that bad, he definitely has the potential to move up the board here and create sort of value for that number. I think, as I said, I think that there's a little bit of a standoffish scenario because, he had that risk concern last week.
Okay, guys, let's get into the winners. Ben and I it's the easy route, Ben. Xander Schauffele, the way he has been going about his business. I don't think Scheffler is in the right, I don't want to say the mindset of this, but clearly he's not the top of his game right now. That's my issue with Scheffler. With Schauffele, With Schauffele, I just think he is going to cap off his greatest season he's ever had. And I think the fact that he, in my mind, is the leader in the clubhouse, if Scheffler is going to fall apart, he's the leader. They all got to catch him, and I think the guy's got plenty of game to do it.
No one was more annoyed with the restoration of East Lake than Xander Schauffele because he has dominated at that joint since inception, winning on debut there as a kid. And as I said earlier, being in the top 7 every other year. Now, assuming that the changes aren't too dramatic, aren't too drastic, and he can still bring that game that he's brought there before, he is the obvious choice for me. I said at the start of the playoffs, I said at the start of the year that this is the candidate to win the FedEx Cup just because of the dominance at East Lake. And we talk about mindset. I don't think Scottie Scheffler's mindset is in the right place. I think he was a little frustrated with the format and everything that's happening and the fact that they have to go to a place where he hasn't been at his best to try to win it all, whereas Schauffele has a leg up there, and I think he knows that, and he was a little bit frustrated by it. And I think that if you have that in your mind, that seed of doubt, it's not great when you're trying to go out there and win this thing. So, look, Schauffele wants to just prove himself one more time. We know he's a bulldog. We know he's a fighter. I can see him going right to the end. Even when he wasn't necessarily giving his absolute best over the last 2 weeks, he has still contended. A little bit of. I actually expected more from him on Sunday in Denver, to be honest. But as soon as he didn't birdie the opening par 5 on the first on Sunday, you could see him sort of take a step back and conserve some energy because he wants to win this thing. I'm ready for him to do it. I'm ready for them to then have the discussion on who's Player of the Year, where it's 6 wins and a gold medal versus 2 majors and a FedEx Cup. It'll be an interesting debate.
Plus 225 for an outright. Good God. Oh, that is.
But let's be fair, Matt. Would you have made the same pick if you weren't trailing Ben in the outright?
It's a great question.
I think you would.
I probably would have. I would have. Yep.
Okay.
I agree with you. I just can't suggest a 225 outright, and I get the starting strokes, but if you're playing good, you're playing bad. The starting strokes is an advantage for sure, but it's not that big of an advantage if he only has a 1-shot lead on the field and 2 behind Scotty. At plus 225, there's other 225s I'd take.
What's your pick?
It's there for a reason. He's the man, and he's your guy. I mean, look.
Let him explain his pick.
I love Hideki Matsuyama this week. So this is a bet that you're going to know round 1 if this has a chance or not. Because he's going to come out and he's either going to play fantastic or you're going to see that his back is actually an injury. Here's a quote from Hideki Matsuyama. There are many players from different countries, and to not yet have a player from Asia win the FedEx Cup is something that motivates me. I would be very happy if more people believed that a player from Asia could win it. That tells me all I need. These other players are not nearly as motivated as Hideki Matsuyama. I think he didn't finish off last week because he knew he was going to have a long week. He was going to come down to the wire. He was playing fantastic in Denver. He backed out because in the back of his mind, he said, I need to attack this FedEx Cup. He knew he'd start at 7 under, worst case if he backed out. That's right where he wants to be. I love Hideki.
Benny's ready to attack.
I'm just laughing because his back has been an issue for a year. His neck's also a problem. He was, in fact, also, and I don't know how much this was reported, he was sick last week as well. He'd lost a bunch of energy. He was struggling with that. He used a lot of that energy in
when did he play bad? When has he played bad? I mean, he played a great first round.
For a couple of holes where you told me he wasn't going to win in Memphis. He was playing terrible. And then
He played great. He looked
to his
amazing.
credit, he bounced back. He is hurt. He hasn't got the record at Eastlake that others have. And when it comes down to it, that's it. Xander's got the record behind him. Rory's got the record. I love Hideki. He is going to be a great part of the International President's Cup team. We chat all the time. We laugh in broken English. He knows more than he lets on. Look, he's going to be there or thereabouts. But he also, if he is hurt, he's not going to battle through it. He's not that guy.
Since starting strokes.
If Xander's back tweaks, Xander's going to try to hit a golf ball on his knees.
Be aggressive, Matt. Go get him.
Yeah.
Just
That's
talk
not
over
gonna
him.
happen.
Since starting strokes has started, 5 years, the average starting stroke score is 7.4. If you took all the starting strokes,
Yeah,
divided it by amount, 7.4.
Rory.
Hideki's sitting at 7.
It was
Hideki's
2 times
sitting
it was
at 7.
Rory. 10
all I'm
under,
saying.
10 under, 8 under, and then Rory twice. That's what we've had. 10 under,
I think
10 under,
he
8
knew-
under, and Rory twice.
He knew the position he was in Denver. He said, do I really want to stick this out? Hard walk. I'm exhausted. Do I really want to push it this week, or do I want to get ready for next week? He said, I'm going to get ready for next week.
That
We're going
tells
to
you
see
everything you
fired
need to
up.
know. It tells you everything you need to know about his competitive nature. He was one shot off the lead, and he won the week before. And
To win this.
Can we do a wager? What can we safely do here? Like that wouldn't get us in trouble.
Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless used to do cases of Mountain Dew.
Okay.
That was
So
their
why don't
match,
you
was
guys,
cases
if we're
of
going to
Mountain
see
Dew.
each other,
Or you
in
just
November,
want to go Hideki, Xander head to head, and I'll give you that.
do that. Do the
every day of the
head-to-head
week.
Hideki Xander with no strokes. You guys want to do that?
No starting
No
strokes.
strokes. Absolutely.
It's only
Give me
one.
that
It's only
any
one.
day of the week.
Wait. We doing a 6-pack or a 12-pack of Mountain Dew?
We're going to do
Whatever-
12-pack. Let's
Name
2
your
units.
price. Name
2
your
units.
price. I'll give him a warehouse of Mountain Dew on that bet. Let me tell you, Xander's the man. You talked about the motivation because an Asian player hasn't won, and you say that he's more motivated. I mean, honestly, get your hand off it, Matty. Xander Schauffele has been so close to winning the FedEx Cup for so long. You think he's
But
not
his
more
season's
motivated?
good. His
You think
season's
he's not
good. He
more
got 2
motivated than
majors.
Hideki Matsuyama?
I don't think he-
That is
yes.
a load of garbage.
I do
There-
not think
and-
he's
and
as
honestly,
motivated as Hideki
regard,
Matsuyama.
in that regard too, like Scheffler, you think he's not motivated? He's heard all this talk that we're going on. He's heard that we don't think he can win from 10 under. Like, you want to
He's
say
different.
that they're not motivated? They're way more motivated than anyone else to get this.
Scheffler's motivated because of the last 2 years. Xander's not really that motivated because he's been playing amazing and he doesn't really care too much. I don't think he cares as much as Hideki does.
I'm
doesn't
showing
care as
Xander
much as
this.
Hideki.
I'm showing Xander this clip because that'll just mean he'll win by 7 shots instead
Don't
of
do that.
3 or 4. Because Xander is an absolute fighter. He's a bulldog. He
is.
thrives as the underdog. And the fact that people are
He's not an
writing him
underdog.
off. He's
He's number 1 in power
right now.
rankings. Bolton put
Right.
him number 1 in the power rankings.
Doesn't
He's
matter.
probably the most bet
look at
player
the
this
odds.
week.
Look at the odds. He's an underdog to Scheffler.
Plus 225.
Mate, we're getting plus 135 in a head-to-head. I'm taking the 135.
You and I hammered that.
Yeah, I'm taking. Last week I took Schauffele in the head-to-head against Scheffler, and it paid off. It got me more of a lead against you guys who couldn't handle saying that Scheffler would fold. And now you want to join me in the Scheffler will fold scenario, but you don't want to take Xander. I'll run it all week. Xander's the man. He's going to win this thing.
Scheffler's going to win, and none of this is going to matter. Scheffler's going to prove
If
that this is
Scheffler
a
wins,
season.
I get
Take
the
it
Mountain
away.
Dew.
There you go.
Good night.